A young nurse sang softly to an elderly patient, unaware that someone powerful was watching. What happened next would change their lives forever. This is a story of hidden kindness, second chances, and the moment fate intervened. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications. Stories like this remind us that life's most powerful moments often happen when no one's watching. The unseen observer. The fluorescent lights of Maplewood Elder Care Center buzz softly, casting a sterile glow over quiet hallways. At this hour, most of the staff had gone home, leaving only the night shift to tend to the patients. Among them was Lila Dawson, a young nurse with tired eyes but a gentle touch. She moved through the dimly lit corridors with quiet purpose, her sneakers squeaking faintly against the polished linoleum. Room 312 was her last stop before a break. Inside, Mr. Henry Caldwell lay still in his bed, his breathing slow and steady. At 82, Henry had once been a vibrant man, a retired history teacher who loved jazz and told the best stories. But a stroke had stolen his words, leaving him trapped in silence. Most of the staff treated him like just another patient, another name on a chart. But not Lila. She stepped inside, letting the door click shut behind her. Henry's eyes were open, staring blankly at the ceiling. "Hey, Henry," she whispered, smoothing the thin hospital blanket over his frail frame. "Another quiet night, huh?" No response. Not that she expected one. She checked his four, adjusted the flow, then paused. The room was too still, too heavy with absence. So she did what she always did when the silence became too much. She sang. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper, as she hummed an old folk tune her grandmother used to sing. "You are my sunshine." Henry didn't react, but Lila kept going. She reached for his hand, his skin paper-thin beneath her fingers. "I know you're in there somewhere," she murmured. "And I'm not giving up on you." She didn't sing for praise. She didn't even sing for Henry, really. She sang because, in a place where machines beeped and time moved in slow, suffocating increments, music was the one thing that still felt alive. What she didn't know was that someone else was listening. Daniel Mercer had been wheeled into the hallway by an orderly for his nightly lap around the floor, a reluctant attempt at mobility therapy. At 45, he was used to being in control. CEO of Mercer Biotech, a man who commanded boardrooms and million-dollar deals. But now he was a prisoner in his own body. The car accident had left him with a fractured spine, his legs useless. The doctor said he might walk again, but after weeks of pain, of failed treatments, of staring at the same four walls, Daniel had stopped believing them. He was supposed to be in a private facility, the best care money could buy. But his sister had insisted on Maplewood. "It's not just about the medicine, Daniel," she'd said. "It's about people. As if people could fix this." The orderly pushed him past room 312 when he heard it. A voice. Soft, warm, real. Not the clipped tones of nurses discussing med schedules or the hollow reassurances of doctors. This was different. He lifted a hand, signaling the orderly to stop. The door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, he saw her. A nurse, her back to him, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. And then he heard the song. "My Only Sunshine." Daniel hadn't cried since the accident. Not when they told him he might never walk again. Not when his board voted to appoint an interim CEO. But something about that voice, the way it cracked on the high notes, the way it filled the empty space, hit him like a fist to the chest. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. All he could do was listen. The nurse, Lila, her badge said, finished the song with a quiet sigh. She gave Henry's hand a squeeze before turning toward the door. And that's when she saw him. Their eyes locked. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Daniel's throat tightened. He should say something. Explain why he was just sitting there, staring like some kind of intruder. But the words wouldn't come. Lila's lips parted in surprise. She recognized him. Of course she did. Mercer Biotech CEO had been all over the news after the accident. But the man in front of her wasn't the polished titan from the headlines. This man was pale, shadows under his eyes, his posture stiff in the wheelchair. A flicker of understanding passed between them. Then the orderly cleared his throat. "Mr. Mercer?" We should get you back to your room." Daniel didn't respond. He just kept looking at Lila, as if trying to memorize her face. Lila hesitated, then offered a small, uncertain smile. And in that moment, something inside Daniel, something he thought had died in that car, stirred. The orderly wheeled him away before he could speak, but the song stayed with him. And for the first time in months, Daniel Mercer felt something other than anger. He felt hope, the unexpected request. The next morning, Lila's shift ended at 7 a.m., but she lingered in the break room, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Her mind kept replaying last night, the way Daniel Mercer had stared at her, silent and intense, as if she held some unspoken answer. She had replayed the moment a dozen times, wondering if she'd cross a line. Singing wasn't in the job description. Her phone buzzed. A text from her supervisor, Miriam. "My office. Now." Lila's stomach dropped. She knocked lightly before entering. Miriam sat behind her desk, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Mercer requested you," she said without preamble. Lila blinked. "What?" "His private suite. This morning." Miriam's tone was clipped, but there was something else in her eyes. Curiosity. He was insistent. Lila's pulse jumped. Had she done something wrong? Was this about the singing? She smoothed her scrubs, suddenly self-conscious. "What does he want?" Miriam shrugged. "No idea. But when a man like Daniel Mercer asks for someone, you don't keep him waiting." The walk to the VIP wing felt endless. Lila's palms were damp by the time she reached Suite 6. She hesitated, then knocked. A deep voice answered. "Come in." The room was nothing like the others at Maplewood. Spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a leather recliner, and muted abstract art on the walls. Daniel sat by the window in his wheelchair, sunlight cutting across his sharp features. He looked exhausted, shadows beneath his eyes, but his gaze was alert, fixed on her. Lila swallowed. "You asked for me?" For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, "Do that again." She frowned. "Sir?" "Sing." His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in days. "Like you did for Henry." Lila's breath caught. This wasn't a reprimand. This was the request. She glanced around, half expecting someone to jump out and tell her this was a joke. But Daniel's expression was deadly serious. "Why?" she asked before she could stop herself. His jaw tightened. "Because I haven't slept in weeks." The raw honesty in his voice stunned her. She'd read about his accident, the fractured spine, the surgeries. But she hadn't considered the invisible wounds, the kind painkillers couldn't touch. She hesitated. I'm not a professional or anything. I don't care." There was no arrogance in his tone, just desperation. Lila exhaled. Then, slowly, she walked a chair beside him and sat. "What do you want to hear?" "Whatever you sang last night." She closed her eyes for a second, gathering herself. Then she began. "You are my sunshine." Her voice was softer here, more vulnerable without the cover of night. She kept her gaze on her hands, nodded in her lap, too nervous to look at him. But as the song built, something shifted. The tension in the room eased. The air itself seemed to soften. When she finished, the silence stretched. Then, a shaky breath. She looked up. Daniel's eyes were closed. A single tear traced down his cheek. Lila's chest ached. She didn't know this man. Not really. But in that moment, she saw him. Not the CEO, not the patient. Just a person, broken and trying to remember what it felt like to be whole. She didn't speak. Neither did he. Then the door burst open. Dr. Reynolds, Daniel's lead physician, stood frozen in the doorway, his sharp gaze darting between them. "What the hell is going on here?" Lila stiffened. Daniel's eyes snapped open. Reynolds marched forward, his white coat flaring. "Mr. Mercer, you're supposed to be in physical therapy. And you—" He turned on Lila, his voice icy. "What exactly are you doing?" Before she could answer, Daniel spoke. "She's helping." Reynolds scoffed. "By singing?" "Yes." Daniel's voice was steel. "It worked." The doctor's lip curled. This isn't some feel-good therapy, Mr. Mercer. You need real treatment, not whatever this is. Lila's face burned. She should leave. Apologize. But something in her resisted. Daniel's hands clenched the arms of his wheelchair. I slept for the first time since the accident. That's real enough for me. Reynolds' jaw tightened. He shot Lila a look that said this isn't over, then turned back to Daniel. We'll discuss this later. Alone. With that, he stormed out. The silence that followed was thick. Lila stood, her legs unsteady. I should go. Daniel didn't argue, but as she reached the door, he spoke again. Thank you. 2 words. Simple, but they lingered in the air long after she left. Later that day, Lila was restocking supplies when Miriam found her. Reynolds filed a complaint, she said quietly. Called your actions unprofessional and a breach of protocol. Lila's stomach twisted. Am I fired? Miriam studied her. Not yet, but the board's reviewing it. Lila nodded, numb. She'd known the risks. And yet, was it worth it? Miriam asked. Lila thought of Daniel's tear, the way his shoulders had finally relaxed. Yes. Miriam sighed. Then fight for it. As she walked away, Lila realized something. This wasn't just about a song anymore. It was about what healing really meant. The broken protocol. The hospital board convened at 3 p.m. sharp in the administrative conference room, a sterile space with a long mahogany table and walls lined with plaques honoring donors. Lila sat stiffly in one of the leather chairs, her fingers knotted together in her lap. Across from her, Dr. Reynolds leaned back with the smug assurance of a man who had already won. Miriam sat beside Lila, a silent show of support, though her tight-lipped expression betrayed her worry. At the head of the table, Gerald Whitmore, Maplewood's director, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. Let's address the matter at hand, he began. Dr. Reynolds has raised concerns regarding Nurse Dawson's conduct in Mr. Mercer's care, specifically the use of unapproved therapeutic methods. Reynolds didn't wait to be called on. Music therapy isn't part of Mr. Mercer's treatment plan. We have protocols for a reason. If every nurse decided to improvise, we'd have chaos. Lila's nails dug into her palms. She forced herself to breathe. Whitmore turned to her. Nurse Dawson, would you like to respond? She straightened. I wasn't trying to replace Mr. Mercer's treatment. I was trying to help him in a way medicine hadn't. Reynolds scoffed. By singing show tunes? By reminding him he's still human. Lila shot back, sharper than she intended. The room went still. She exhaled. He hadn't slept in weeks. He was in pain, not just physical. If a 5-minute song gave him relief, how is that wrong? Reynolds opened his mouth, but Daniel's voice cut through the room before he could speak. Because it worked. Every head turned. Daniel sat in the doorway in his wheelchair, his posture rigid, his eyes blazing. An orderly hovered behind him, looking uneasy. Clearly, he hadn't been supposed to will Daniel here. Whitmore stood. Mr. Mercer, this is a private. I don't care. Daniel's voice was low, but carried the weight of a man used to command. You're discussing my care. I have a right to be here. Reynolds bristled. With all due respect, medical decisions should be left to medical professionals. Daniel's laugh was bitter. You mean like the ones who pumped me full of pills that didn't work? Or the ones who told me to stay positive while I couldn't feel my legs? He locked eyes with Reynolds. Lila did more for me in 5 minutes than your entire team has in weeks. The room fell silent. Whitmore cleared his throat. Mr. Mercer, we only want what's best for your recovery. Then listen to me. Daniel's knuckles whitened on the arms of his chair. I'm not just a chart to be checked off. Neither is Henry Caldwell. Neither is anyone in this facility. A murmur rippled through the board members. Lila watched as Reynolds' face darkened, but before he could retort, Miriam spoke up. Respectfully, our mission at Maplewood has always been holistic care. If a patient responds to something beyond traditional medicine, shouldn't we consider it? Whitmore rubbed his temples. This is highly irregular. Daniel wasn't finished. Then let me make it simple. Either Lila stays or I transfer to another facility, and I'll make sure every donor on your board knows why. The threat hung in the air. Daniel Mercer might have been in a wheelchair, but his influence wasn't diminished. Whitmore exhaled. "We'll take a vote. All in favor of allowing Nurse Dawson to continue her unconventional methods under supervision?" Hands rose, hesitant at first, then more. Reynolds remained firmly down, his jaw clenched. Whitmore counted. "The motion carries. But," he added, shooting Lila a stern look, "this stays within approved parameters. No more surprises." Lila nodded, relief flooding her. "Understood." Daniel met her gaze, something unreadable in his expression. Just as the meeting adjourned, a commotion erupted in the hall. A nurse burst in, breathless. "You need to see this." Room 312. Henry Caldwell sat upright in bed, something he hadn't done without assistance in months. His lips moved silently, as if struggling to remember how to form words. Lila rushed to his side. "Henry?" His hand trembled as he reached for hers. Then, in a voice rough with disuse, he whispered, "Thank you." The room froze. Daniel, who had been wheeled in behind them, sucked in a sharp breath. Even Reynolds looked stunned. Henry's gaze flicked to Daniel, then back to Lila. With effort, he added, "Don't stop." Tears welled in Lila's eyes. She squeezed his hand. "I won't." Reynolds recovered first. "This proves nothing. A fluke." "A miracle," Miriam countered softly. Daniel watched Lila, something like awe in his expression. The rules had been broken, and for the first time, that felt like a good thing. Later that night, Lila found Daniel in the hospital garden, staring at the stars. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Risk your reputation for me." He didn't look at her. "I did it for me. And Henry." A pause. "And because Reynolds is an ass." She laughed, surprised. Daniel finally turned. "You were right. About all of it." The admission cost him, she could tell. Lila sat beside him. "What happens now?" He smiled faintly. "Now, we change the rules." Above them, the stars burned brighter than they had in years. The ripple effect. 3 months later, the grand ballroom of the Maplewood Foundation Gala shimmered under crystal chandeliers. The event was the hospital's biggest fundraiser of the year, and tonight, every influential donor, doctor, and local celebrity had gathered under one roof. Lila stood near the back of the room, twisting the stem of her untouched champagne glass between her fingers. She still wasn't used to events like this. The clinking glasses, the polished smiles, the quiet hum of wealth and power. At the front of the room, Gerald Whitmore adjusted the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce a man who needs no introduction, our keynote speaker, Daniel Mercer." Polite applause filled the room as Daniel stepped onto the stage. He walked with a cane now, his stride slow but steady. The months of grueling physical therapy had paid off, though Lila knew better than anyone how much each step still cost him. Daniel gripped the podium, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on her. Just for a second. Then he began. 6 months ago, I was in a car accident that shattered my spine. The doctors told me I might never walk again. A pause. What they didn't tell me was that the hardest part wouldn't be the pain, it would be the hopelessness. The room grew still. I spent weeks drowning in self-pity. Then one night, I heard something I wasn't supposed to. His voice softened. A nurse singing to a patient who couldn't speak. And for the first time since my accident, I remember what it felt like to hope. Lila's throat tightened. Daniel continued, his words measured but fierce. We're taught to believe healing only comes from medicine. But sometimes it starts with song, a hand to hold, someone refusing to give up on you when you've given up on yourself. He nodded to someone offstage. A screen lit up behind him, revealing the words, the Henry Caldwell Initiative. This program will fund music and alternative therapies in hospitals nationwide, Daniel said, because healing isn't just about fixing bodies. It's about reminding people they're still alive. The applause was thunderous. As the lights came up, Lila spotted Henry in the front row, beaming beside his daughter. His speech had improved dramatically since that day in room 312. He still struggled, but now he laughed. Now he sang along. Daniel made his way through the crowd, shaking hands and accepting congratulations, until he finally reached Lila. "You clean up nice," he said, eyeing her navy blue dress. She smirked. "You don't look half bad yourself, Mercer." For a moment, they just stood there, the noise of the gala fading around them. "Thank you," Daniel said quietly, "for not following the rules." Lila shook her head. "You're the one who changed everything." "No." He glanced at Henry, then back at her. "We did." Epilogue, 1 year later. The Henry Caldwell Initiative had expanded to 17 hospitals. Daniel still ran Mercer Biotech, but now the company funded research into music therapy's impact on neurological recovery. Lila became the program's director, traveling between facilities to train staff, though she always made time to visit Henry, who now lived with his daughter and, on good days, could sing entire verses without stumbling. And Daniel, he still needed a cane on bad days, but on others, he walked without it. Stories like this remind us that the smallest act of kindness can change lives. Did this inspire you? Share it with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life moments that prove the world is still full of unexpected miracles.